So within the EAW so-called processor that we're now allowing lab and PowerSoft to embed in here stuff, we have really the advanced algorithms that we call focusing, cleaning up what kind of inherent difficulties in transducer design. It's not that we're taking a cheap transducer and all of a sudden we're making it good, although that can happen. But we now have the ability to take the very best and clean up inherent difficulties in the way they work. And that are all related to time smear. Ideally, you want to put out a sound impulse and you want it to arrive at your ear in the same manner it was created. You don't want additional delays and artifacts associated with it. And by getting down to the component level, we're able to, I'm just trying to say predict what the artifacts would be, measure, it's all measurement. And we can measure what the artifacts are and then effectively precondition the signal to correct for those artifacts. They're all related to the manner in which a transducer propagates sound. Because it's never pure. And again, going back to, just being still crazy after all these years, trying to make it better. This really does have a big impact on the purity and the accuracy of the sound. So we'd like to be able to control that. So we embed that in the DSP platforms in a black level. Nobody can get at it because there's all you can do is screw it up. But on the other hand, a sound designer wants to be able to effectively fine-tune to the conditions of the show, the environment, whatever. So the processors have the front end that has got EQ and delay and the usual level, and then associated with it, and that effectively is the white level. You can go in there and adjust whatever you need to do to make the show work, make the room work, get the EQ settings right, adjust delays one part of the system to another. That's kind of a white level. So you put white and black together, you get gray. So we call these gray boxes. And, they've expanded to encompass a pretty wide range of the EAW product. And we are trying to limit the use of DSP platforms to those who will support these gray box settings, because in that manner, you're really able to optimize the sound character. You get the best possible sound. So our internal amplification packages all include the ability to do all this. And include the network ability to address them. You've got signal and control over Cat5 or separate if you want. Signal can be distributed over regular analog lines. But every powered product has the ability to implement these gray box settings on it. And we really see that as a way to, I don't even want to say bring it really does bring things to the next level, but it puts a consistency across the brand. So they products start to get distinguished from their pattern control and their output capabilities, and they all sound really good. So you are able to take relatively limited performing, take a little high frequency driver that's not what you would tend to use in the big touring world. Might be 1.5 inch voice coil, has limited power handling, maybe limited output capability, but it's totally appropriate for certain types of systems. And it probably costs, quarter of what a big driver would be. So you're not burdened with the cost and everything. But you can take that and you can get the sound character out of it that you can get out of a big driver. So then it becomes a choice, not that I got to get the big system because it's going to sound better. I can use the lesser one because it just fits my needs better. It may be smaller, it may be more cost effective. It has all the performance needed for an application, but you still get the best sound quality. So there's, and that has led to an unwillingness to support other DSP platforms. Part of it is because these platforms are not compatible with implementing these gray boxes on them. It's you know, it does require very advanced DSP chips in that, although they are becoming more common. So there are platforms out there that could do it. And one of the reasons we partnered with Lab and PowerSoft is, gee, they happen to be using the latest chips too.
Sure.
So our firmware can run on their platforms, although it has taken a lot of work to kind of rewrite some of the codes and that in order to do this. So it's not a trivial thing. It's not like, what was it? Well, let's just give all this stuff to PowerSoft or give all the stuff to Lab. It wasn't that simple. It started out with, okay, you're going to give us this stuff and we won't distribute it. But then it also took a commitment on their part that we'll rewrite some of the code for our platforms that will accept this. So the inherent capability was there, but the firmware just wasn't supporting it. And I mean, these are all big projects. There's nothing trivial about sitting down and writing code. You know, software is not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah.
That's why you have firmware versions 98 or whatever we're up to.
Well, that's great. Well, that's fascinating. And it's interesting to look at, how DSP has changed. First, kind of how we were able to put systems together and how we were able to control them in that environment. But now to see you going back to the component level and, for lack of better terms, as you said, fixing some of the inherent difficulties, the mechanical difficulties and so forth that are in those devices.
Yeah, as long as it's fully predictable. Now, theoretically, you can fix for a point in space. You can actually correct for a diffraction around cabinets and that. Anything that's predictable, you can do it. But we don't do that. And we don't do it because, well, I don't know, maybe you could do this in a studio environment. You got the engineer sitting at the desk, but yet, I mean, nobody sits at the desk. They move around the desk.
Yes.
So you can optimize for a particular point in space, but then you're creating problems everywhere else. So what we do is correct or optimize, whatever term you want to use, for the basic propagation of the system. That if it's independent of space, then we'll fix it. But if it is dependent on something, diffraction around cabinet corners is a common thing. Certainly reflection off of a wall, well, that's room environment.
Right.
So we only correct for those things that are kind of inherent in the propagation mechanism. It's at the transducer level, the horn level. Horns have a reputation of being honky. And they're honky because there's reflective energy coming out of them. So if you effectively capture this thing that's kind of bouncing down the horn and trying to bounce back out again through the negative version of that signal, so it doesn't come back out again, all of a sudden they start sounding very natural, in addition to controlling where the sound goes. So it's one of the fundamental precepts of the company 32 years ago was put the sound where you want it and not where you don't want it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, kind of as a little bit of a parting shot here, I'm going to put you on the spot. So you said all the engineers at EAW play an instrument. Do you play as well, and what do you play?
I'm well, I play the piano. I do not play it well, and I do not play it very much. But I spent years learning how to play the piano, and unfortunately, by the time I got to the point that I really could play, I got on to other things.
Yes.
So at some point, maybe I'll get back into that, because it all comes down to the music.
Yeah.
We've got people that are bass players, they're singers, they're guitarists. I mean, we've had pickup internal bands at company outings.
Sure.
Kind of thing. So a lot of people play something.
Yes. Yep. Well, that's great. I love your statement right there. It does. It all comes back to the music, or I'd add in, it all comes back to the music and voice reproduction. It's got to be natural.
Well, you got to understand
transparent.
You got to understand what the announcement is.
Yep.
And,
exactly.
I mean, sometimes it just comes down to life safety.
Sure.
if there's something going on and you can't make the announcement to do something understandable, then you're in really big trouble. And it may just be, exit 23. Go in that direction, or don't panic.
Right.
Or something, but it's got to be understandable. So voice announcements, music playback, the excitement of, rock shows. One of the things we've done recently, getting into kind of the rock and roll world, although it's in the dance club world, we've introduced a range of 21-inch subwoofers.
Yeah.
And, I'll say 5 years ago, what do you need a 21 for? Because all they really did was kind of rumble around down there. And that's an example of improved transducer technology, magnetic circuit design, improved materials in the cones. So now you can build a large cone device so you actually have high impact to it. It doesn't just rumble. It can be as impactive as something smaller. So our goal was to come out with a 21 that was just as impactive as an 18. And it turns out that it's impactive as a 15, probably.
Wow.
You say, well, what do you need 20 cycles for? Well, I'm not sure you need 20 cycles, but what you get is this remarkable foundation on, on the basic sound. I'm not sure if it's so much easier at 30 cycles, or 35 cycles than a smaller cone is. But with very strong neodymium magnets and carefully designed circuitry in that, you can have the impact of the lesser designs. And what has resulted out of this is a 21 that actually has very marginally greater displacement than two 18s. It's totally, you've got a longer travel, you got a much bigger cone, you've got a much bigger magnet, you've got as much magnetic energy as in the two 18s probably. And that has put a remarkable foundation on some of these new systems. So it's like taking advantage of new technology, pushing the envelope, continuing going to new directions. Now, if we're going to do a 24, well, there's no plans. We probably have to go to we might have to go to an 8-inch coil, but we are looking at designs that have to use 8-inch coils. It's kind of an R&D kind of investigative process, so I'm not sure where things are going to wind up. So there's a lot of evolutionary background work that's going on that may wind up in the new product. This high-level voice warning system, not voice warning, voice announcement system we did, well, they also wanted drums with it. So they wanted bandwidth down to at least 60 cycles. Well, that was a new development on a 12-inch component for a horn load that had very high power handling, very impactive. And that was really a evolution beyond some of the work we've already done. So there's evolutionary work, and it does lead to advancement in capabilities on it. And while this module done for that project was probably unique to it, the techniques that were brought into it are already being looked at into new product on it. Extraordinarily high output, excellent pattern control.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I appreciate you spending some time with us today, and it's interesting to see how your product development is pushed by the market sometimes, and then just pushed by your insanity other times.
Well, it's a bit of both. We try to be responsive to needs expressed to us. A lot of the product ranges come out of that. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't do any good to just pull something out of the blue, and then you got to figure out a way to use it.
Yes. Well, Kenton, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining us here today.